Yo, guys, the Better Podcast, Season 2, Episode 8, this time around. You can see it looks a bit different. I'm here by myself. I'm not going to be talking to myself. Um, but this guy that we're speaking to is so elusive that we had to get him online via Zoom, all the way from the United Kingdom. And why I felt this guy was important to chase down and get his stories, his mad stories, is because if you think of any big transfer in South African football, he was probably part of it. He's been in this agency business for longer than I'm doing this job as a journalist. Probably while I was still in school, he was doing some of the biggest deals in the country. So I'm really honored and pleased to have this guest here today. We'll get into some of the big high profile players that he has and that he's been managing in a minute. But just to start off, thank you, Paul Mitchell, from Siyavuma Sports, for joining us on the Better Podcast. It's really an honor to speak to you today.
Yeah, hi Lorenzo. Thank you for that introduction. Very honored to be here, mate, and nice to see you again, even though it's online. We're looking forward to having a chat with you, all things football.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been trying, like I said, been chasing you for a while. So just for the people who don't know who you are, and your agency, can you just give a brief overview of, your agency and your history in the game, particularly in the South African market, where obviously most of our audience is looking to.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been in the agency business for 25 years now, I think. Yeah, 25 years now. And obviously, when I started in the agency game, um, mostly concentrating on the Europe and the UK, but also a bit of South America at that time. And then eventually made my way into the African space through a couple of deals from Africa into Europe. And then I was very privileged to be able to meet Benny McCarthy and Aaron McQuainer when they were at Blackburn, Stephen Pienaar when he was at Everton. Became good mates with Benny and his family and his brother Jerome. And yeah, obviously then started working into the South African space. Think we brought Georgia Kuna to Sundowns. I can't remember what year that was. That was probably about 2005 or six. So that was one sort of deal that opened my eyes to South Africa. And then yeah, I think 2008 brought Matthew Booth back from Russia from his career in Russia into Sundowns as well. And yeah, myself saw a gap in the market and saw a place for our brand to be there, and came to South Africa to live and work in, yeah, at the end of 2008.
So, obviously, you're from the UK. You forged a impressive career in South Africa as well. Just on your agency, the name of it, the story behind the name, and who your agency is also affiliated with, because I think that's also very important to give reference to the credibility of how established this agency is.
Yeah, look, the name Siyavuma derives from the Zulu word kind of to agree. That's how it first came about when we were looking at relative names for the brand in SA. So that's where that derives from. A couple of people had ideas on it, and that was the one we settled with. Obviously, a lot of people know us by that, but a lot of people also know us these days by SSG. So yeah, that's how the name derived. And then in terms of our network, I mean, we've got a joint venture with CAA Base in London, who are the market leaders in the world, along with the likes of Stella and Waterman. So I've had a relationship with Base since about 2003, 2004. But obviously, when we go into Africa, we then put together a joint venture, which we've held for about 12 years now. So that allows us to be part of an exceptional global network. So I think there's an office in every major European city. Offices in Brazil, offices in Tokyo, Japan, Argentina, all over. So that it's really beneficial for us in terms of network for us to be able to move players into Europe and globally. Maybe MLS, maybe South America, maybe Japan, like I said. And at the same time, it gives us access to a global client list where, we're able to, give clubs when they request players. We've got a pool of talent we can tap into. So that's always good. And speaking today about South Africa, that's also good for us for the South African PSL because we're always able to provide foreign players depending on what clubs want.
The global network obviously of SSG is quite important. But when I was coming into the industry, obviously your agency really stood out for me because I saw, players like obviously Keegan Dolly going to Montpellier. I saw Fakhri Lakay on your books going to Egypt, Gift Links going to Egypt, and then a record deal for Cape Town City. Sianda Kulu, who, was one of the players that I always admired because I saw him at the age of 16, 17 playing for Sundowns at the Bale in Cape Town, which is a stone's throw away from my house where I grew up. I saw he was on trial at Atletico, Real Madrid, and eventually went to Russia, had a good career with Bafana as well. So these are the type of players, obviously, that were making big moves and are all linked to SSG. So just for the audience, these players that you've that the type of deals that you've done, for which ones of those like really stood out for you as maybe not even the biggest financially, but that was close to your heart and that you really it was just really close to you being involved with this player, seeing them flourish.
Look, I think to be honest with you, I think there's a story. There's a story behind each and every one of them. If I go right back to, you know, probably 2008, 2009, that era when you're right. Sianda came through 16, 17. 17, he played first team at Sundowns. Obviously, we had just brought Matthew Booth back at that kind of same sort of time. So them two formed an unbelievable partnership. Um, and then obviously with Sianda, for example, he went to Barcelona, did very, very well. We were told actually in Barcelona that they were signing him. That we were told to go back to South Africa and they would start the process of discussing with Sundowns and doing work permits and all of that. And then that following week was when the presidential elections were on at Barca and it all changed. And everybody from the academy down got fired basically overnight. So that put a stop on the deal. But in terms of all the deals, I think they've all got a story. Robin Legalandi, who was very, very quality player, especially when he was young, and everybody wanted Robin. And we took him to Atletico Madrid. And when you take a boy from Malawi who's come across at 16, 17 in South Africa, and then at 18 he's signing for Atletico for Madrid. I mean, that's what dreams are made of, and to be part of that dream. For the boys is always special for me. It's not always about the financial side of it, the financial sort of gains, for them or for us. It's a lot of the good feeling you get when you're working in the African spaces from the lives you can change. And I would hope that I've changed a lot of lives for the better in terms of the players. And like I say, each one has a connection. Gifty, Gifty's like me. It's like my son, Gift Links. Super close with him. Took him as a young boy from Platinum Stars at 17. Absolutely convinced him to go to the now Pyramids, which did him a world of good. And then obviously when that club became Pyramids and they were getting sold and becoming Pyramids, I recommended him to John Committis, and I said to John, close your eyes, please. Just put the money on the table for Gifty. You won't regret it. And John took my advice and did it. And 18 months later, a bit less, we were selling him, or John was selling him for 850,000 euros. So yeah, like I say, every single one has got a story to it. I think in terms of significant deals from South Africa overseas in the last 16, 17 years, I would think we've probably done 70%, 75%. Pakimani Melambi, we brokered that deal to Al Ali. Obviously, you talk about Fakri Lakai, who Fakri's had a great time in Egypt and he's still doing well and earned a lot of money in the process, which is, fundamentally, that's what the game's about. These lads need to go and make the hay while they can. Football's a short career. So, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. I think that the hardest part of my job is trying to move, let's keep it to South Africa for this conversation, but trying to move a South African player into the overseas space, it's not easy. And I think why we've been successful is because I understand the dynamics of both. I understand living in South Africa 16, 17 years of my life. I understand the cultures, the different cultures. I understand the dynamics. But you know what? I understand European football. So, it doesn't make your job easier, but it helps you to be able to be realistic on where a player can potentially be and how do you get him to that place. Because I think there's too much in South Africa where people think it's easy in Europe. People will say, this league's a farmers league, for example, when actually it's far from it. I think people are misdirected in the levels. The level of the PSL now compared to 5 years ago, the level of the PSL compared to this league in Europe. I had this conversation the other day with somebody regarding a couple of the lower leagues. The sort of, without sort of going into too much detail, but sort of leagues in Europe that some people might find a sort of, oh, this league's really good, but if you're in the European space, this league's down here, and not a lot of people are interested in going there or doing deals there. So it's about understanding the dynamics of both and trying to work around the kind of pitfalls that you come across a lot. And we all know what the pitfalls can be. But in terms of the experiences that I've had, I think I've been through the mill with different overseas deals. Keegan Dolly to Montpellier is no secret how difficult that was. But we never gave up and we got a solution in the end. And, Keegan went to France and had 4.5 wonderful years. And, financially earned really good money out of it. And ultimately, that's what my job's about. That my job is to provide futures for these players and provide the best level I can, but at the same time, not taking your eye off. The game ultimately is about earning a living so that when you retire at that early age, like you do in football, you can be set for life.
On that note, you speak about obviously helping players earn money because that's what it's about at the end of the day. Do you think somebody like Keegan was tarnished in the media and not by himself? Because we've had long conversations about this amongst ourselves in the media that Keegan's numbers was best. He had his career best numbers at Chiefs. But there was obviously some rumors saying, he was earning this, he's earning that. And, it created a narrative that even turned the fans on him. You know what I mean? Do you feel like, maybe transparency sometimes from either club, player, or even agencies is important to avoid such things? Because like we all can see, if you go on Google, you can see his career-based figures there, but his reputation was tainted so much about rumors that even to an extent that clubs would not even try and go for him because Keegan Dolly's too expensive for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, and it's I think that's probably one of my biggest frustrations in the last couple of years, apart from Gift Links not being in Bafana, is Keegan Dolly because look, with Keegan, we all know how good Keegan was and how hot he was when he was at Sundowns, and he had many clubs chasing him, and we got him to Montpellier. So he goes to Montpellier, he has 4.5 years. nearly 5 years, actually, 5 years at Montpellier. Now, you know, in that time at Montpellier, I think he had four coaches. I think he had three coaches in the first 18 months. But he had four or five coaches. But he stayed at the football club for 5 years. So he did something right, you know? And ultimately, he earned very, very good money. And ultimately, that's what the game's about. It's about getting to the highest level you can and achieving in your career. Okay. But it's also about earning the best money you possibly can so that when you're 34, 35, and you're sitting at the breakfast table with your kids and your wife talking about, can you remember the day I won the FA Cup? Or can you remember the day I won this? But your wife looks at you, and I have this, I say this to a lot of players and parents, but your wife looks at you and says, well, that was great, but we can't send the kids to school. We've got no school fees. What's the point? And a lot of people, you know, they'll go on about the money, but they don't realize how important the money in a place like South Africa, where life is unforgiving, life is hard. There's no assistance from a government like in Europe. If you hit hard times, you're on the bare bones of your backside. So part of the biggest part of my job is trying to negotiate a player's career to the best of my ability to make sure that financially he's in a good space. What he does with his money entirely up to him. We're not an agency that will be on people's bank accounts. We're not an agency that will interfere. We're an agency that will give great solid advice and put a team of people around somebody if they need it. But you can't take the horse to water and make it drink. So you're going to have
Mm.
players that are good with the money, and you're going to have players that are not so good with the money. And it can be a variation of peer pressure. It can be black tax comes into it. Peer pressure comes into it. Um, surrounded by the wrong people can come into it. What I mean by that is hangers on, friends who don't work and you're the one paying when you go out. Or it can be players that are really good with the money. It's always different. And that is the biggest part of what we do and what I do. And it's not always easy. But in terms of Keegan, you're quite right. His time at Chiefs in his first two seasons were the best numbers he had data wise, assist wise, goal contributions. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think he got 7 goals second season or something. And then, yeah, a two-tier thing. You've got number one, he's on X amount, okay, which was the figures banded about weren't true. And he's always injured. All right. Where, he's coming out of Montpellier, he's on a free, right? So you're coming from League One France back to South Africa. Let's be honest, you're going from there to there, level wise, right? And he could have stayed in Europe. We had things in Europe where he could have stayed on relatively similar, money, maybe a bit more than what he was on at Chiefs, and he could have stayed. But Keegan also wanted to come back. He's had, 5 years away, started a young family, didn't really fancy maybe dropping into this league or that league when he could come home, be around his family, be around his mum and dad, be around Tara's mum and dad, his wife, and have his kids raised in South Africa. That was a decision we collectively made. And there was a lot of people who were interested in his services in South Africa. And we cracked a deal with Kaiser Chiefs. And like I say, the numbers that were reported were not correct. But then to answer your other part of your question is, should there be more transparency? In all honesty, no. And I say that very straightforward and etc. And that is because South Africa is a different place compared to other places. We know the crime levels. We know what can happen. So I think both agencies and clubs and even players, to be fair, have a duty to try and keep as much of that sort of news out of the news, because it's a private thing, and we don't want to, put players in positions of risk or, so I think that's important, that the transparency is not there too much, because it could cause major issues. But is in the final year, Keegan was very unlucky because he was actually offered a contract at the beginning of the final year, and we kind of waited, and then he got injured with his, I think it was his, I can't remember, his groin knee or whatever, and then he came back, and if you remember, he came back, and what a lot of people don't realize is on the first game, I think it was the first or the second game he came back, he broke his toe in the game, right? You can't play football with a broken toe. That's, you know, that's just a given. So he then was out again. So then it all started. He's always injured. He's always injured. He's always injured. Fine. He's always injured then. So you just take it on the chin. And he's on all this money. So it then became almost like, a Twitter rant by thousands of people. Ultimately, Kaiser Chiefs decided, which is completely within their right, not to extend his contract or not to give him the other, a new contract that was offered at the beginning of the season. And that's fine. That's football, and everybody moves on. He enjoyed his time at Kaiser Chiefs. Wonderful football club. Great to be an employee of Kaiser Chiefs. Gone through their challenges in the last few years, but it'll come, the glory will come back again, I'm sure. But he enjoyed his time there. They didn't want to extend. Everybody moves on. Simple as that. So, he's then, being a free agent. We've looked at various things. What's important to Keegan is to remain in South Africa. Kids are getting to schooling ages, stuff like that. So, then it takes away. We did have some possible opportunities overseas, but obviously Keegan wanted to remain. So we looked around and Tim came in. I mean, Tim knows Keegan as everybody else does from when he was young, and really wanted him to be a part of TS Galaxy. And I mean, he's there. He's been playing. He's coming off the bench. I think starting in the cup, should be starting some games now. But he's adding value there, and I'm sure he's adding value a lot to the younger players as well with his experience. But nobody can take away from what Keegan Dolly's done. Keegan Dolly's done what every boy in South Africa dreams of. He's gone to Europe and he's gone to French League One. He's had 5 years. I've done my job. Keegan's done his job. We're happy. And what the outside people say, you're never going to stop that.
If you look at the greater scheme of things in South African football, recently this FIFA licensing thing has come in to a credit to try and, I think for lack of a better word, sift out, the chance takers, the fly-by-nights and what have you. One, do you think it's done, it's had the desired result? And two, how difficult is it to navigate this market in a space where I have seen that clubs are trying to avoid you agents like the plague because they don't want to pay you guys? So many agencies are struggling, many are even closing down, many going into different careers because they're not making as much money as people to survive as people think they are. So how difficult is this space to navigate in South Africa? I mean, you in the UK, you've got other markets that you explore and things like that, but I'm just trying to give a perspective of how difficult it is to be in general an agent in South Africa right now.
Yeah, look, it's very difficult because the dynamics have changed, and they've changed in many ways. In the PSL, I'm referring to. Just to talk about the FIFA agent license system per se and how it's changed with this new exam. Yeah, it's changed it. Has it changed it for the better? No. Why? Because in terms of that exam, it's open book exam. So what you're finding is you're getting a lot of new kids on the block or new people coming in and taking the exam. But, your generation your generation and even above your generation have grown up with computers. When I was at school in my last year at school, 1986, we never had computers. Now, don't get me wrong, I've worked in corporate for many years and then been in the agency business for 25 years. So obviously I'm computer literate. But the reason I'm talking about that is because the exam is open book, okay? Which means that it's 20 questions, multiple choice, and it's open book. So it means that you can read a question, and if you're tech savvy, you can have the FIFA PDF on your laptop, which is not cheating by any stretch of the imagination. It's allowed, but you can basically put in keywords or put in even a question, and it will generally take you to the pages in the FIFA manual where you'll probably find the answer. So what you're finding is a lot of people are passing it because they're tech savvy, but they haven't got a clue in general about the rules and regulations. Yes, they might have revised. Yes, they might have sort of sat down and studied in preparation, but do they know actual rules? No. I mean, I was reading an article yesterday in, I think, Kickoff or one of them, where there was somebody, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there was somebody referring to a situation that's happening at one of the clubs with a player, and what he said in there as a whatever he says he is, okay, was completely wrong. Now to me, that is giving a complete wrong scenario out to the public who are trying to knowledge themselves in terms or gain knowledge about how the problem may be or what is it, or just in general what happens within contracts. So I think you've got a lot of people out there who are doing that, and a lot of people that are out there, they've passed their license, they're full of beans, and I've seen it over 25 years, and I've seen it over 20 years of working in South Africa. I've seen them come and I've seen them go. Okay, because it's very, very difficult and it's very, very hard, as you've just alluded to. But you've got a lot of people out there that pass the exam, they're full of beans, and they realise. And that's no different in England. In England, your top companies are going to make the money. The top agents in terms of the companies are going to make the money because that's what players want to be. They want to be with good companies, good brands, top people. A lot of people below that trying to earn a living, nearly impossible. And you're right, a lot of people go into other things, they realize it's too difficult. And I think going back to your question on the PSL, I think there's just the dynamics have changed. And I always say this, and I've said this to you before, Lorenzo, that if you take the different problems that you may see in the PSL, it comes back in a way to the same common denominator. Now, what that common denominator is not for me to say on a public platform. But if you know football and you're working in football in South Africa, you'll know what the common denominator is. And that's something that what does the future hold? You don't know. Us as an agency, we've worked very hard over the years, not only to become a market leader in South Africa, across the African continent as well. I mean, we're very strong, as you know, in sort of North Africa, especially in the Egyptian market. We've got we've just signed the under-20 keeper from Senegal lately, we've got big hopes for. So we work up there in terms of West Africa. In Senegal's a market for us that we're heavily looking at and heavily involved in. So we've worked very hard over the last 20 years to put things in place. And is the PSL the same as it was 5 years ago? 100% no. When you're talking about the agency space, again, why? It goes back to the common denominator. So, will it change? Who knows? We can only see what the future holds. But I certainly think what you were saying is 100% correct.
Realistically, how many clubs in the PSL? I know many people have been calling it spaza shops, but how many clubs can you realistically work with in 2025 where you'll actually make money from? Like, not even like just money in general, whether it's a 5,000 rand or whether it's a 10,000. How many clubs in the PSL can you realistically work with right now?
I don't think it's so much about can you make money from, because that probably somebody could interpret that it's only about making money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course we run a business, and a footballer plays football and he's got his own business because he's a footballer. A club wants to make money, whether they recruit players to develop, to sell, they want to be financially stable. We're all in the same way. To be brutally honest, to answer your question, 7 clubs if you're lucky. In today's world, 7 clubs if you're lucky. If you've got ethics about you and you've got morals about you and all of that, you've probably got 7. I mean, nobody wants to be working with a party or a club and there's going to be no respect to a player's contract, or there's going to be just blatantly not going to respect a contract and you don't get paid and a player doesn't get paid, for example. So, realistically, I would say probably 7.
if you're looking at the seven, it would be a 7-9 split in this. We just focus. We're not even focusing on the NFD now. There's a 7-9 split, right? Would you say those seven clubs will be alive in 2030, and those other nine that you cannot work with will probably not be alive in 2030? Because let's take it as a 5 year gap.
I think it's difficult to answer that question properly though, because I don't think anybody who's been involved in football in South Africa with the PSL could really answer that question properly, because I think we all don't know to a degree what the future holds. You know, I would have said 6 years ago, I never thought I would see the amount of South African clubs getting FIFA bans for non-payments or being completely struck off like now we're playing with 15 clubs. I never thought we'd see that in the PSL 5 years ago. We never had that, did we? I can't remember going back to them days, really a club that was under a FIFA ban. Now, don't get me wrong. Globally, because of COVID, for example, and different dynamics, globally, financial markets and countries, everybody's had the challenges. The PSL has always and still has the good governance. I still believe it's the best league in Africa. That's debatable because people will talk about levels. Is it the best? When I say that, I'm talking about the organization, the commercial side, all of that. I do believe it's the best in Africa. Is it the best level? It's debatable, mate. I mean, Egypt's a very, very good level. I always say it's just horses for courses. There's a lot of players in South Africa couldn't play in Egypt because it's a different kind of league compared to ours. So you'll always get debates on the level of the league. But in terms of the PSL as it stands on a platform with the rest of Africa, for me, it's the best. And I know we talk about this league in this country because that derby gets 60,000, but being honest, the PSL for me is the best league in Africa. It's disappointing when you see a lot of things going on, but it is what it is. You have to roll with the punches, and you have to see. But what does the future hold? I don't think anybody realistically and on heart can say it'll be like this. Answering your question about the split of clubs in the PSL, I mean, look, we've lost good clubs, haven't we, to a degree? If you look at the Bidvest Wits we lost, which was a great club. And the replacement hasn't worked out, has it? Let's be honest. And we've lost clubs through relegation as well. You lose a club like Cape Town Spurs, you lose a club like the now Durban City, that was Marisburg. And you want that, you want them back in the PSL because that they run things the right way. So I think you've had a combination of franchises getting sold and then not always carrying on in the same vein, and then you've had relegation of good, well-run clubs, and then you've lost them. So that's why you split can happen, and it'll get better or it might get worse. You never know. But yeah, I just don't think we can look at the future. But what you can say is that with the chairman being there, I think we can all see how good a job he's done over the years, and long may that continue.
Just going away from the general thing and zooming more on things that you've done in the last couple of months, let's say the last 12 months and beyond, someone like Rushan leaving Sundowns, getting an opportunity to go back to play abroad. That's one thing. The Cape Town Spurs deals, which multi-million deals to Stellenbosch, Cupido, Rushwan Dotley. I'm sure many of the audience didn't even know that Rushwan Dotley was somebody that you've known since since he was just coming out of the academy. You took him for a stint in Denmark where he was this close to signing. There's maybe a handful, like 6, 7 deals that you've done in the PSL. maybe focusing more on Dortley and Rushan. Just how did that come about? Because I'm sure Dortley was a player that was quite in high demand. And secondly, I heard that there was, Sundowns didn't want to lose somebody like Rushan because they still believe he's quality player. How did you get these ones over the line?
Look, with the I always get tongue tied with these two because you've got rush in and rush win. But with Dortley, I don't like calling him Dortley either. It's not an English thing. We don't like calling people by the surnames. But with Rush
Mm,
Win, look, wonderful kid, great family, wonderful lad, quality player, quality player. I gave him the nickname Rolls Royce, and it stuck because when he plays, he plays with that sort of calmness, that sort of, it's got that little bit of a class in his pass.
mm,
But I mean, how that came about, I mean, we signed him, Ernal, who's director at Siyavuma, partner. Ernal really liked him, and we looked at him, and we all agreed, he was quality when he was young. Stature, presence, good left foot. You can't go wrong with left-footed centre backs. Um, and yeah, I mean, look, he played in the first team there at Spurs, and then we had this opportunity. He went to FC Nordsjælland, which is a right to dream academy. All the top players like Kudos and Camaldian and Damsgaard. I was at Brentford. I went to watch Brentford Everton last night. And Damsgaard was different class, and he came sort of through a similar system. And yeah, I mean, opportunity came to go to Nordsjælland. He went to Nordsjælland. It was in the January window. He did exceptionally well. They even kept him for an extra week. And then basically the deal was it was going to be quite a large loan fee with an option to buy. And then one of their older players came back from injury a little bit quicker than they thought. So they decided not to go for Rushwin and just monitor him at that stage. And that deal sort of fell away. But he learned so much from that experience. He just got his head down, came back to Spurs, did wonderful in the first team, got his call into Chan, Kosafa, had a real good Kosafa. And then, yeah, Spurs unfortunately got relegated. And then obviously, it was then time to do what we do best. And that's try to create the stage and create the platform for him to go up and move on and ultimately get him out of that football club, because that's not always the easy thing, as you guys in the media know. He then obviously did well, got into first team, played in the Kosafa, and then yeah, I mean Spurs unfortunately went down, and then it was looking at a potential for him, and what was it going to be? Very, very difficult, to be brutally honest, because obviously, the transfer fee was a decent amount, and Spurs were stuck in the ways about that. But we proved again what we can do at SSG, and we pulled it off and managed to get Rushwin to Kaiser Chiefs, where he's loving life. On the back of that, he's got into the national team setup, which has been brilliant, and he's had some good performances, for the national team for Bafana. So yeah, I mean, all bodes well. His first season at Chiefs, you're always going to take a bit of time to settle. Let's be honest, Chiefs have got a new technical team in, they've got new players in. It's going to take time. They're going to have to recruit more, and they're going to add more, which I'm sure they will. And it will take time, but from him, for him, from a personal perspective, he's loving it. He's loving it. He's in a good space at the moment. He's had a bit of an issue with a knee, but he's trying to work through that. But yeah, I mean, he's enjoying life at Kaiser Chiefs, and he's got a big future, mate. he's still young. He's still only 22. Obviously, everybody will talk about Europe, 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 and I'd be no different. But you would want him to go to Europe, in the next year, 18 months max. I mean, Keegan Dolly went at 24. Um, so that would, probably the ceiling of you going to try and benefit yourself from a development point of view. But I've got big hopes for him, and he's a wonderful kid as well. I really have a lot of time for him. He's got a good attitude. He's got a real good manner about him. Comes from really good parents, and yeah, the future's bright.
Just to think about, you talking about 24 years old is probably the cutoff before getting into a top European league. You've managed to get Rushan out, well, not out, but as in back to a place where he always wanted to be. He was at Pakos after African soccer development as a teenager in Portugal, came back, did really well for himself, got into the Bafana squad, and just had a little bit of blip here and there. Now he's back in Israel trying to, get back on that level where he was in the national team and what have you. But also, Ashley Cupid is somebody that a lot of people are starting to talk about as well. So just how did you manage to, garner that interest for Rushan to get back where you wanted to be? And two, Cupido is also somebody that a lot of people are looking at and saying, there's potential for this kid as well to, as Rushu and Dortley, to get to Europe because of the quality that they have at such a young age.
Look, I mean, like you say, he was in Portugal when he was a kid, and he's always held a desire to play football outside of South Africa. That's always been his thing, and he's been with us for many years. So we've always known he's had that desire. It goes right back to when he was at Marisburg before he went to Sundowns, that he had that desire. Like I said to you earlier in the conversation, the hardest part of our job, my job, is trying to move players from South Africa to Europe. It's not easy. A lot of work goes in, and it's not easy because you've got a lot of competition. Even harder now. I mean, because everybody knows the story about the PSL and Y Scout. I mean, if you go into a player's profile now in the PSL, unless he's played for Bafana and unless he's played in the Champions League or Confed, you ain't gonna find a game. If I look at Reece Rosler on Y Scout and I'm a sporting director in, I don't know, the MLS, I won't be able to find any footage of Reece since 2023, 2022, 2023 season. So, it makes our job even harder now, and it's not helping the growth of SA football. But anyway, that's another topic. Going back to Rushing, he's always had that desire. Did really, really well at Sundowns, like you say, national team, first 11, doing really well. Picked up an injury, was out, came back, picked up another injury. So he had a real stop-start sort of 18 months, coupled with, a couple of sort of maybe not seeing eye to eye with certain people on certain things. But generally, in terms of his injuries, he was really unlucky. But then he obviously, as you know, he came back. He played in October. But obviously, from his sort of point of view, is that desire to play football. And then obviously, when the last window came about, and there was some discussions between me and Fleming Berg, the sporting director at Sundowns, about Rushing, and Fleming really, rates Rushing and holds him in high regard. But obviously, at the same time, fully understood that he needed to play football, but alluded to the fact that Sundowns couldn't allow him to go out unless they were able to maybe get in what they were looking at getting, which obviously is the left-footed centre back Suarez, from Argentina, that was coming in potentially. And to be honest, it was an open book. It was like, if we get, if we do get this player in and maybe one more, we can potentially look at it. Obviously, there was local interest. There was local interest in him for straight, negotiation to buy him, maybe straight negotiation to loan him with an option. But the desire from Rushing and from our side was to look at opportunities abroad. And I think as I said earlier, we've proven over the years we've got a very, very good network. We're strong in the overseas market. We have a very, very good partnership through our partnership with CAA Base in Israel. Obviously, we've had the likes of Sianda Kulu out there, and we've had Ibrahim Jabbar out there. We had Rowan Human out there. So yeah, we marketed Rushin in Israel, and we had a club that really liked him, and we were able, as much as it was a little bit of a roller coaster at the last few days, there was an opportunity for him to get a loan to Israel, and then we'll take a viewpoint at the end of the season. He's loving it there. He's loving in the environment. He's loving the professionalism of the team. You know, he said to me, "Look, the level of the league is it's above the PSL in his opinion, and he's getting tested. He played his first full game at the weekend, did well, got beat 1-0 to the big team, Haifa, Maccabi Haifa, but he really enjoyed it, and he's loving life there. So we'll see what the future holds. There's no At this stage, it's purely a loan till the end of the season, and then we'll discuss it with Sundowns and discuss it with him and the other club and other clubs, and see where we are. But yeah, he's doing well. And then Ashley Capito. I mean, look, Ashley Capito, a player in my opinion who's very underrated. I mean, I had a discussion. I went to watch Cape Town Spurs. I can't remember when, really, probably 2.5, 3 years ago now with Alexi, the owner. We went to see Spurs, were playing in Portchester, and we went together at that time, and Ashley scored a great goal. And I said to him, with Ashley, he's got to play. He's a player that needs to start. He needs to get his rhythm. And when he does, he'll score goals. And he proved that at Spurs. He got that shirt. He got that 11. Sean Bartlett gave him his trust, got his arm around him and said, go play. And he went and played, and he scored all their goals to get them promoted. And again, sizable transfer fee on the request from Spurs, which was never going to make things easy for us as an agency. But as we proved again, we did the deal, and we managed to get him out, and obviously Rushwin Dortley out of Spurs. And I mean, he's gone to Stellenbosch. Been a little bit stop-start. I know there's, if you look at how Stellenbosch are at the moment, there's a lot of rotation. If you look, the two centre midfielders always rotate, strikers always rotate because they've got a lot of games in the Confed Cup. So that's been a little bit frustrating for Ashley because, like I say, he's a player that needs to go play, and then he gets his rhythm. But he's gone and played, and he's just scored. Well, he's got 3 goals in the last couple of games. I think it should have been 4 goals, but the chalk one off as an own goal. But yeah, I mean, his stats are good now. He's got quite a few assists as well. I think he's got 4 goals, 6 assists or something. He's a player, like I say, he's quick, he's lightning quick. He can play on the shoulder. He can drop deep and hold the ball. He's got a good first touch. Lightning quick as he proved with his last goal. And he's dangerous. And he made it into the Bafana squad, the sort of the bigger squad in the last sort of camp, and which was brilliant. And I do think he's a player that we will see more for Bafana into the squad. And I think he's got a big future. I think there's a lot more to come from Ashley, and I think he will go to the next level. If the luck, doesn't desert him, he will go to the next level.
Well, the 3 players who I believe has a lot of potential to play for the national team and potentially go to Europe is Ashley, Rushwin Dortley, and Rowan Human. They had a good age, producing good performances in the PSL, and potentially have good chances of even going into the AFCON at the end of the year and beyond that. What would be the challenges to get those 3 type of players? I know they're at different clubs. It will be different people that you deal with, different positions even. What would be the challenges to get them to Europe?
Look, I think the biggest challenge, if I'm honest, is what I was talking to you about previously, and it's the issue around access from overseas clubs to see South African players. People might turn around and say, oh yeah, but Campbell went to Belgium. And as I pointed out earlier, is that where you've got players that have played in Bafana or the Confed or the Champions League, that footage is actually getting loaded onto the Y-Scout scouting system because it's going through different TV channels, but there's no agreement between the PSL and Y-Scout in terms of the the day-to-day PSL. So, for example, if you go into Ashley Capito and try to analyze him because you're a sporting director in France or Belgium, you're not going to see anything apart from 2 or 3 years ago. And to be honest with you, from the conversations I've had with a lot of people at sort of higher levels in football clubs in Europe, it's like, but why is this? It's like South Africa's Mickey Mouse because they're not even on Y Scout, and that's the feeling that people are thinking, which is going against the PSL. They don't actually realise until we explain that there's no agreement on the rights to be able to have that footage. So that's, for me, that's a big problem, because then you're reliant on, we've got to run around and get full games, send full games across. Then they can't always analyze it in the same way, because remember, when you're going into the scouting system, all clubs have different ways of using that system for their own benefit, along with other systems and data and all of that. So all football clubs have, their own unique way of how they analyze players. So that's difficult. In terms of over and above that is, you want your players in the national team setup. So you want your players to go into a major tournament like an AFCON, or be playing at national team level, because these players are not going to cost zero money or little money. They're going to come out of the clubs where they are now for sizable transfer fees, and a sizable transfer fee is anything nowadays, going over 2, 3, 400,000 euros. So, once you start to go above that bracket, then players need to be playing national team, because a sporting director will say to me, well, Paul, they want €1 million for him, but he's not even in your national team. He's not even in the South African national team. Valid point. And the club want €1 million. And I think it's because, obviously, we know with South African clubs, we know the market in South Africa is very inflated in terms of the local transfer kind of fees. And that then in due turn kind of inflates the overseas market to a degree. So I think trying to get, well, it's not really trying to get them. The boys, by their performances, is trying to get themselves into the national team setups, which will greatly improve their chances. Because if you can go to that AFCON and be on that AFCON stage and playing in the AFCON and coming on and having good performances, you're going to get inquiries. You're going to have clubs looking at you. And I always say, and I've said this for years, all clubs need a stage. All players need a stage. You need a stage to be able to perform. The PSL on its own is not generally a stage. To be frank, it's not generally a stage. It's a stage, but on its own, it's difficult, and even more so now, given the situation where clubs abroad have not really got access to our players. But I do have high hopes for all of them. Rowan Newman, I've had Rowan since he was 13, 14 years old. Great kid. I love Rowan. Always makes me laugh when I'm sort of, having one of them days. Rowan will always make you laugh about something if you speak to him. Wonderful footballer, excelling at Amazulu now, getting his groove, getting into that sort of 8.5, number 10 position where he's dangerous. I think when we saw him in the DDC at Wits, that's where he scored 12, 14 goals in the DDC. Was a little bit stop-start for him last year. Obviously, Amazulu have also had changes in terms of their technical team. Arthur's come in, Arthur Swani, who knows him very well from the DDC games, and has really got him playing in the way that Arthur knows he can play, which is anywhere around that 8.5, 10 space. Technically very, very good. Also had a year at Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. And to be honest, really only came back because of the trouble at that time in that country, in terms of the trouble they had. So it was a little bit unnerving at that time. So Rowan decided to come back. Well, he was a wanted man in South Africa. I mean, Marisburg at that time really wanted him, and they bought him. And then obviously when they went down, there was a lot of interest. And Amazulu were the ones who put the money on the table and got him, and they've got a great player, and he's this season's been really good. And his last few games he's adding goals to his games, which is brilliant. He's matured really, really well. He's looking after himself off the pitch. He's dedicated himself to the profession, which is what you need from any player. That's what you need to be successful. You can have all the talent and the skill in the world, but you need to dedicate yourself to the profession. You need to live clean. You need to eat clean. You need to sleep well. You need to conduct yourself off the pitch in a way that will help you on the pitch. And that's what's happening with Rowan. The penny's dropped, and it's great to see where he is right now. And I think he's got a big future.
Speaking about the stage, you're saying the national team. Gifty is somebody who is ranked as one of the top performers in Denmark at the moment. Has it been an issue for you to try and, well, not try, because I know there are clubs that is after Gifty. It's no easy in the Super League team of the season. They're trying by all means to even commit him to the club for a lifetime. That's how much they love him. Has it been an issue also when they ask, why is this guy not in the national team? And do you think Safa has done enough to give him a fair chance? Because they can watch Stellenbosch, the coaches can watch Stellenbosch, they can watch Chiefs, they can watch what, but do you think they've given him a fair chance by not, spending a little bit of money just to go out and watch him at AGF? So, two, one, has it been an issue when people ask why is the guy not in the national team? And two, do you think he's had a fair chance?
It has been an issue. I wouldn't say an issue per se. What I would say, has it been a topic of conversation in Denmark Super League? 100%. So I've had a lot of Danish journalists. They've even spoken about it on Danish TV, etc. So to answer that question, yes, it has. Has he had a fair chance? No. But anybody who knows me well, I'm not somebody that will be banging on a Bafana door, instructing or trying to instruct anybody to put our player into the national team. And you see a lot of them comments from, the public in terms of agents are interfering. It's not something I've ever done and would never do. And it's a coach's call. Should Gift Links be in the Bafana squad? 100%. That's my personal opinion, and I'll tell you why. He's playing at the highest level of any South African player below Lau Foster in the Championship. So there's nobody playing in a better league than the Danish Super League than Gifty. That's the first thing I would say. Positionally wise, I mean, he's been converted now to left wing back, which he plays very, very well. He was in the team of the season for the league in the Danish Super League last year. He was in the team of the season, and that was as the only foreigner. He was in the team of the season for the first half of this year. So he's carried that form on, playing left wing back. But we all know he plays right wing, he plays left wing, he plays left wing back, and he's also dropped in as an 8 at times for AGF. So wonderful footballer, strong as an ox for the size he is, heart of a lion, ultimate professional, getting accolades. No secret that they want, his club AGF want to tie him down to a long-term deal, and we're talking to them now. No secret there's interest in Gifty. So yeah, I think the only thing that I would say, which I feel very strongly about, is two things. The first thing is that I've heard it from third parties that one of the reasons is because when he was first picked in the first game under the current technical team or the current coach, it was Zimbabwe away, and Gifty came off at half time. Now, what I've heard from third parties, and this is from obviously journalists who've done interviews, is that Gifty asked to come off because of his knee, and it was thought that there wasn't really a problem with his knee. Now, where I take an issue with that is he came to South Africa injured. They played him injured. And when he went back, he was 4.5 months or 4 months out, which proves he had a bad knee. Okay. So if it were to be a question of he's not there because of that incident, then that is fundamentally wrong, because he was injured and he went back and he missed quite a few months, and it set him back because, at that time there was big interest, because he'd done in that second season, he'd scored 7 goals from the right wing, he'd got 7 assists. So yeah. And the second part of your question, which was, just remind me, please.
Have they done enough to give him a
Ah,
fair
sorry, yeah.
chance?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question broadly because what I don't want to do is be perceived in this interview that, I'm banging the gift links drum to put him in Bafana. That's not the case. He should be in Bafana based on his performances for his football club at the level he's playing for. What I will say, and I'm going to say this without fear or favour, is the fact that he's been in AGF for 5 years. Not one time has anybody in that 5 years from Safa been to watch him play live. And what I will say, and I'll beg to differ, when are our overseas players getting watched live by anybody? They don't. Nobody's gone to Burnley. Nobody's gone there. So, you know, that for me is something that I don't mind saying that because I can't really fathom it that you would not have anybody going over and watch. But like I say, from our point of view, in Gifty's point of view, Gift is proud of his country. He loves playing for his country. He hasn't been picked. It hasn't stopped him working harder. He hasn't been in the media and moaned. He's just said he'll work harder, myself included. I've not been in the media and said Gift Links must be in, but I'm just today giving you our side because I know a lot of people are saying they can't understand why he's in. And you'll see the local based players that are in before somebody who's gone to Europe at 800,000 and he's playing week in, week out. And, don't think anybody's picked up the phone to his coach. German ex-international, played in the Premier League in Uwe Rosler. So, yeah, bit of a mystery, but Gifty's Gifty. Gifty will carry on playing, carry on pushing, carry on trying to impress the selectors. And let's hope it turns because he's a wonderful footballer and he can offer a lot at national team level because he can play in a lot of positions.
Look, just before I let you go, I don't think I'd be forgiven for not asking you this. There's been a lot of interest in two players specifically that you guys look after, which is Reef Flossler. The ad links overseas. There's also no secret that he's out of contract. And then Evidence Magopa, after the amazing AFCON that he had, he's got plaudits from all over. He also got a lot of interest in his services. Can you categorically say that they will both be in the PSL by the end of the season?
Look, in terms of Reef, I won't hide it from you that he's out, contract in June. But we are in discussion with Kaiser Chiefs right now. We are talking to them about that. So that's Reef. He's had how many years? It's I think 6 years now at Kaiser Chiefs. And as I said previously about Rushwin Dortley, he's in a great space. Any player that plays for Kaiser Chiefs, will not complain about the environment they're in terms of the professionalism at the club, the facilities at the club, the brand, how big the brand is. I always say it's like playing for Man United in South Africa. That's how much of a bubble you're in, and it's not easy for a lot of players to be in that bubble. But Chiefs have been great to Reef, and Reef's been great to Chiefs, and it's a relationship that will possibly continue. But obviously, as you know, with any contract discussion, it always takes a little bit of time just to sort of go through it, look what the club are saying, and look what we're saying. But we are in discussion, and I'm very positive about it. So, will he be playing outside of the borders? Look, I'll be honest with you. Reef could have gone to
Now
Bucharest with
Bucharest.
Engizana. Yeah, they wanted Reef as well to go. People asked why didn't he go. We made a decision collectively with Reef not to go. Romania is not the easiest place, to be brutally honest. If you understand Europe and you understand their league, as much as Engizana's playing in Europa and it's all rosy from the outside, but we collectively sat down with Reef and his family and us, and we made the decision not to take the offer. Um, which Kaiser Chiefs respected because obviously it keeps a great footballer with them. You can never say never about somebody playing outside of the country because you don't know if somebody's going to come in and put a bid. I mean, the Bucharest was out of the blue, so you can never say never. But at this moment in time, the only football club we're talking to is Kaiser Chiefs. So, And then on Evidence Magopa, wonderful lad and quality player. I think he again underrated. He gives a lot in terms of what he can offer. As he showed in the AFCON. He led the line on his own. We finished third. He had his detractors, he had his criticism, but what did he do? He gave his all for the country, and he helped the team get to third place. Scored a great winner against Morocco. Um, Evidence is a big lad. He can hold the ball. He can get into the channels. He can drop deep. Deceptively quick. He's got that Isaac type feet on him. You never know sometimes what he's going to do, which he gets from playing on sandy, dusty fields in Limpopo as a junior. And look, it's no secret. There was two big offers on the table from Europe for Evidence Magopa when he was at Barocca just before he went to Orlando Pirates. Sizable offers in the Danish Super League, and he wasn't allowed to go. And he ended up going to Orlando Pirates. So we have a good relationship with Pirates. It's Pirates would facilitate the right deals for all of their players to Europe if it's right for the player and it's right for the club Pirates. So I don't see any problem around that if deals or offers do come in. There was interest after AFCON, but to be honest with you, it wasn't interest that I would have encouraged Evidence to look at, because it might not necessarily be in the countries where you would want to put a player. Like a Russia, for example. I don't think you'd be advising somebody too well to advise them to go to Russia, given the climate at the moment. So there was interest, and there will be interest again. Again, talking to Pirates about his current contract and looking at that, renewing that contract. So that's all well and good. And like I say, there'd be no fears from my side of committing on a new contract and not being able to facilitate an overseas deal if it was right for Evidence and for Pirates, because I know for a fact that would help facilitate that if it's right. So yeah, I mean, both players are really settled, and both players pushing all they can to try and make the national team again. Or Reef has been part of the junior setup all the way through, and then he was part of the Olympics and all of that. And in Evidence has also been to the Olympics. Wasn't part of this sort of under 17s, etc., in the 20s, but came through into the Olympics, scored that wonderful goal against France in Japan. And I mean, he's in a settled place. He's working hard to try and impress Coach Bruce for this squad and then beyond. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, they're in a good space, both of them, and I think the future looks bright.
Look, thank you. I mean, we've chewed on a lot of information here today. Honestly, I know this is a rare thing for you to be so candid about many things, but I appreciate your transparency and your openness about the variety of topics. And it's obviously something that we'll probably get into again, because we didn't touch a lot more on the landscape of the professionalism of agency and things like that, because I also wanted to give the audience an opportunity to get to know who your players are, and it's a lot of players that is of interest because they want to know what's happening in their futures. So thank you for sharing that. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed speaking to, or listening rather, to me and Paul discuss everything of SSG and some of his high profile clients here in South Africa. Trust me, he'll be on again, and we'll be speaking some interesting backstories, and might even somebody that you remember, like Matty Patty. So he's been telling me some interesting stories about this guy who was at Sundowns. But yeah, let's just leave it at there. Thank you for joining on episode 8 of the Bettor Podcast. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. Thank you.